How do you like my new media-friendly face which just urges you to subscribe to the channel? I've been practicing all week, so it must be good now, isn't it? Hello there. Ultimate gravel bike. Those are words which I've been uttering for quite some time on this channel, and the bicycle that they are describing is sitting over there waiting to be used as a prop. However, I need to mention something which is kind of tangentially topical, and the topic of this particular video is Sensah Empire Pro, a review after 3 or 4 months of usage. However, that particular bicycle has been using the X-Cobra HB100 144 engagement point rear hub, and well, I've been hearing some worrisome acoustics from it lately, and from the video which I was describing Where Are They Now, you saw there was a little bit of a shimmy when it comes to the cassette, and it turned out there was a boo-boo. Now, I wanted to make a cheeky video and showing you how everything is fine, but it turned out that it's not fine, because innermost bearing, the one that's sitting over here in this particular free hub, which comes from that particular hub, has disintegrated, and you can see its eternal remains over here. Now, a process of getting it out was kind of bloody, because that bearing is being held by this C-clip, and I don't have the proper tools to extract it, so it was not something I would be, well, recommending to others or even gloating about. However, truth be told, I was kind of expecting this to happen. But on the topic of Sensah Empire Pro, well, I think we should start from the beginning. No, your eyes don't deceive you. This is a full suspension gravel bike which currently uses a 2x10 drivetrain with, it's not visible, that's a Shimano Caprio rear derailleur. However, this bicycle has been born out of curiosity, because a few years ago I was in a situation that I didn't have any experience with drop bars. I always wanted to try a bicycle like that, which is, well, with the drop bars, but kind of off-road oriented, because, well, that was the times before the gravel bikes were even a thing. So I bought a Scott Spark 40 frame and built a bike kind of resembling this one, and I liked it very much. However, after some time, 3 years of hard riding, that frame cracked, and you can see this is not an original swing arm, this is something I have manufactured. If you were following the channel, you know the story more or less. However, I have rebuilt this bike, and the concept was that I'm going to make it an absolute gravel meme, because, you know, gravel is the early 90s mountain bike with drop bars, so let's go full Monty with it. So I wanted to make a 3x12 drivetrain, because why not? I wanted to have drop bars, and I wanted full suspension, obviously, because I wanted to rebuild the bike as it was before the swing arm cracked, and I was rebuilding it. Yeah, you get it. You get my point. So I have started to anticipate that Shimano is going to release the Dura Ace and then 105 and whatnot, but that didn't happen as of yet. So then I found the Sensah Empire Pro 2x12 group set. Unfortunately, as you recall from this channel, I don't have pretty good experience with Sensah, because the first product I have reviewed, the Sensah XRX, proved to be kind of meh, and the second one, first one is the SRX, the second one, the XRX, the 1x12 group, proved to be, well, underwhelming. I only get some use from the shifter. However, well, the concept for the ultimate gravel bike continued, so I decided to purchase 2x12 shifters and maybe then work from there. I have started using this with this rear derailleur. This is the SRAM GX, which is supposedly compatible, and it kinda is, but kinda isn't. We're going to be there in a minute. And this ZTTO 12-speed 11 to 34 rear cassette, which is the lightweight one, which, by the way, don't buy those, they are terrible. Anyhow, after toying with 2x12 shifters from Sensah and this GX and this cassette, it turned out that it's not going to be working, because I had severe problems trying to adjust the derailleur on the cassette. And, well, the story was that I tried 2 different setups when it comes to the cabling. I tried 3 or 4 cables. I thought that I have some sort of a kink or something like that or kink or some sort of a problem when it comes to the cable or to the housing or something like that. However, none of my efforts proved to be successful. So after some time I have decided that most likely there's some sort of a weird incompatibility with this GX and the shifters, even though theoretically they should be compatible. As it turned out later, the problem is that the reason why I couldn't adjust it was that this part here was hitting on this part here, and this limits the travel the derailleur can make sideways, and it's simply not reaching 2 last cogs, or not reaching 1 last cog, and has trouble with the other one. The other problem was that the clutch here on this derailleur, coupled to a very long cable run, because that's an XL frame, caused severe problems when it comes to indexing. Even on the part of the cassette the derailleur could reach. So in the end I decided to buy a Sensah Empire Pro rear derailleur. Once Sensah Empire Pro RD arrived, I have installed it on this bicycle, and it wasn't all that much better than the GX. It was a little bit better, but not by much. And at this point I was almost certain that I have another dud on my hand. However, in a fit of desperation, I decided to try to put the Sensah on a different bicycle, and it almost worked. So what I've done, I've taken the 2x10 Ultigra drivetrain from my road bike and put that thing on the Ultimate, and took the Sensah Empire Pro and put it here. However, as you may have noticed, I have the ZTTO 12-speed 1134 cassette here. So what is there? The reason is that I have 2 12-speed cassettes in the same range. This is the ZTTO, this is one is, as I said before, terrible, and this is the one I wanted to use because it's biased towards high speed or high gears, so it's kind of more fitting to a road bike. However, as you saw in the cassette comparison video, this 12-speed cassette and what's there, the Sunshine 1134, with which the Sensah Empire Pro is being sold with, has a slightly different cog spacing. So this didn't work. If you saw my video about Chris Froome and his problems with disc brakes, I was using precisely this cassette and it wasn't working very well, as one person noticed. However, after trying to mate the Sensah with the ZTTO, I have put the Sunshine, and from there it finally started working almost correctly. Because if you have an eye for details, you might notice something interesting about this setup. Alright, so this is the thing, and the difference is that this is not a pulley from Sensah Empire Pro, and neither is this one. This is a Shimano Tourney, I think. Oh, it's a red one, so it's a Tourney. And the other one is Shimano Dior with those tall teeth that are present on the 11-speed groups. And pulleys from the Sensah Empire are here. And the problem, or the reason why they are here, is that they are terrible. After approximately 500 kilometers, there's this much play on the lower pulley, which at this point allows the chain to rub on the carbon cage. Initially the derailleur was working fine, however after 300 kilometers or so the indexing went south, and that's because there's this amount of play in this upper pulley, and as you can imagine this throws off indexing almost completely. So at this point it took me 5 cable changes, 2 housing changes, a replacement of the pulleys, and putting it on another bicycle in order for it to work. Only one of those things was my fault, because the reason why it works here and not working on the Ultimate gravel bike It's because on my road bike I am using a standard hanger, which is a, well, standard as the name implies, and this is an M10 by 1 thread, and the normal geometry you're going to find on almost every bicycle out there. On my ultimate gravel bike, however, I am using a hanger geometry I have developed specifically for my cube, and I have just copied it here, and that's because I'm using almost everywhere a Shimano Shadow type derailleur with a short cage, like here. And this kind of geometry makes the derailleur a bit more compatible with narrow range cassettes. In essence, it puts the derailleur more backward, it puts it more upward, so if the normal pivot would be somewhere where my finger is now pointing, now it's over here, and it rotates the derailleur slightly in this direction. It works great with a derailleur like this one, or Z or something like that, but apparently with SRAM GX and the Sensah Empire Pro, and I guess that many other derailleurs, it's just not working. Alright, so what do we have here? My road bike, which is a road bike, as we all know. This is a Shimano MT210 46x30 2x Drivetrain crankset, which I have reviewed on the channel. 8 speed, so it works perfectly with a 12 speed chain. This is a Shimano Dior 6010, I think, chain, 12 speed obviously. This is a Sensah Empire Pro with replaced pulleys from Shimano. This is a Shimano Tourney, 8 speed. This is a Shimano Dior 11 speed. The cassette is Sunshine 11 to 34, 12 speed, and this amalgamation of random parts. Oh, and if you're wondering, this is a Campagnolo Xenon CT front derailleur, and I think this one is meant for a triple chainset. This amalgamation of parts works like this. As you can see, there's a little bit hysteresis there, but overall the downshifting works great. Or that's upshifting? I don't know. And this we are going to discuss in a minute. But let's run it through the gears once again. So this is perfectly usable. When you're riding, it's not much of an issue. You can always wiggle this, and at some point you get the muscle memory in order to make it work perfectly fine. However, there's a problem here, which can be seen from this gear. This is the 11, 12, 13 tooth cog, and if you want to shift to a 12 tooth cog like this shift is very lazy, and I honestly can't really adjust it correctly. I mean, it shifts at some point. However, I had to modify the cassette to ameliorate this issue. Alright, so here we have both options for a cassette for Sensah Empire Pro. The third one is an 1128, not pictured here because I don't have it. However, these both are 1134. The ZTTO is more biased towards high gears, the Sunshine is more biased towards lower gears, because as you might already notice, this one is an 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 17, 19 and so on. And this one is an 11, 12, 13, 15, 17, 19, 21, 23 and so on. Essentially, from this cog, from fourth cog forwards, all the cogs are bigger on the Sunshine. So what's the difference between those two? If we take a shim from ZTTO, you'll notice that it is 2 millimeters thick. However, if we take the spacer shim, what have you, from the Sunshine, you'll notice that it is 1.2 millimeters thick. Oh, there you go. Now, the issue I have with all of them is that it is very lazy shifting down or to the higher cogs from this cog, and the reason for this is that this shim, for whatever reason, it's now going to be difficult to show. This shim, for whatever reason, is identical to shims you can find on... Focus, you damn thing. Oh, there you go. This shim is 2.15 millimeters thick, which is identical to 11 speed. And initially, I thought that this is a, well, China being China, and I have replaced it with a slimmer shim from... I'm going to show it to you. Something like this, which is 2 millimeters thick, or even slightly slimmer. 2 millimeters. And the problem why this happens is that when you are shifting from the 15 to a 13, it is slightly more outward than the rest of the cassette. So when you're shifting to the 12, this minor difference makes the chain hang on to the 13 and not being released. And I don't know whether this is intentional or not, because if you take from the TTO the same shim from the same position, it is also 2.2 millimeters thick. So I don't know whether Chinese are being Chinese, or this is something in specification for 12 speed, or I don't really know. However, once I replaced this one with 2 millimeters, suddenly the shift from 13 to 12 started working more or less correctly, as you saw from the clip before you. Now, are you interested how the Sensah Empire Pro is going to work with ZTTO? Alright, so we're here. The entire drivetrain is as before, just the cassette has been replaced with ZTTO 12-speed 1134 lightweight cassette. And it works more or less like this. 1, 2, 3. And this is the transfer between the steel and aluminum parts. And from there, it's essentially random. And the problem is that no matter what I do when it comes to the barrel adjuster, I either make it work on the low part of the cassette but not on the high part, on the high part and on the low part. Essentially the problem here is that the Sensah Empire Pro, this one here, this little doodad, is a fixed pivot rear derailleur. It means that only this part can move, and it relies on the offset of the guide pulley to work with the cassette curvature. And unfortunately, I theoretically could make it work with this particular cassette, but it wouldn't work on the granny gear, because I have currently set the B gap to be minimum possible on the granny, and it's not going to work in any other setting or any other position. In short, if you're using Sensah Empire Pro with ZTTO lightweight cassette, this is the best you're gonna get. And the thing about these lightweight cassettes in this very narrow range, at least, is that the aluminium part is going to disappear almost instantly. It disappears before your eyes. I have regenerated this part twice already, and it's already showing signs of wear. The best adjustment I had for this particular cassette is one where the transfer between the steel and aluminum part is essentially not working. You have to force the shift twice in order to shift. It's terrible. Don't buy these things. Now that is a classic backdrop, now don't you think? And if you're wondering where is my turning machine, it broke and it has been sent for repairs. That's simple. What are your opinions of Sensah Empire Pro after listening to all of my mutterings for the last, I don't know how long this video is going to be? Because I gather if they are not going to be very high, and I wouldn't be surprised, because in all honesty, after all of the adventures I went through in order to get it to work more or less correctly, I have to say that the biggest problem of Sensah Empire Pro is that once again it seems like a beta version, and all the parts that are required to make it work correctly or somewhat correctly aren't available. At least the cassette, I don't know whether this thicker shim, which is a minor detail but is actually problematic for this entire system, whether that's intentional or not. On the other hand, I have to say that in the defense of the entire system, that whatever problems it has, they are exacerbated by the very long cable run from the shifter to the derailleur, and the fact that the cables here are hidden under the tape, so there are quite a few very heavy bends from here to there. However, after getting it to work, my opinion is that you, for a very comparable money, you can get Shimano Tiagra 10 speed, at least the 4700 series, and it's excellent. And those extra 1 or 2 gears, it's a nice thing to have. They are very well received by my geeky heart. However, they are not necessary to your riding. When this bike was 2x10, I had just as much fun on it as I have with 2x12. It's a cute thing to have, but it's not really something that changes your perception of a bicycle. And in comparison, that 10-speed system that's currently on my ultimate gravel bike, which is hiding its shame because it broke, that 10-speed system, after 10 or 20,000 kilometers being ridden through mud and all the muck, it's performing much better than this thing. Although I have to say that I wasn't riding this solely on tarmac, it was used as a gravel bike, and considering that the last 3 months over here were essentially mud and more mud and a little bit more mud, well, I have to say that I am surprised that it worked so well, although it's still not working as good as it should. At least it should, considering the type of gear you're getting. My sore point with the entire thing is that Sensah is using those pulleys, which are deteriorating as you look at them. It was the problem with the XRX, it was a problem with the SRX, and it is a problem here. That's why I replaced them, obviously. Now, on a wider point to make is, I think that all of the trouble I have with, or most of the trouble I have with shifting this thing, come from the fact that we are using the same medium for shifting the cable in a housing for the last, I don't know, 20 or so, 40, 50 years, even maybe longer. And as we get the distances between the cogs smaller and smaller, the precision required to make everything work hasn't really improved because we are using the same medium. So this might be the reason why only Campagnolo, which I guess is targeted at a different audience, only Campagnolo so far has introduced mechanical 12-speed drivetrain. SRAM is only introducing 12-speed electronic, at least so far, and from what I get from their mountain groups, 12-speed on mechanical drivetrains is very finicky and difficult to adjust. And I have to say, once again, in the defense of the derailleur and the entire drivetrain, it wasn't really performing all that better when I replaced the derailleur with a theoretically compatible GX. Now, notwithstanding the fact that the GX couldn't reach the highest cogs, it wasn't performing any better. So I guess that apart from all the Chinese cutting corners wherever they can, the core problem with the entire thing is that 12-speed might be scratching the point where mechanically shifting a rear derailleur might not be feasible, because medium hasn't changed, so the precision of this actuation hasn't been improved, and we are scratching the situation where a single click on the shifter might be too vague for the system to react correctly. And in my case, when I have an XL frame, so a very long cable run, if you don't believe, this cable is standard length, so I think that's 180 centimeters long, so I think 6 feet, and I'm using the entire length of it. I haven't trimmed anything. There's a knob over here and I just trimmed, I think, okay, 2 centimeters, maybe 1 inch. Anyhow, is it worth it? No. If you want something reliable, buy 10-speed Shimano or SRAM, I think, but SRAM is too expensive considering the price point. So buy 10-speed Shimano. It works. It's going to work much better. If you have, I don't know, the wish to have 12-speed because, I don't know, you want to impress the ladies, then I guess it's possible to make it work. But from the get-go, replace the pulleys because those that come stock are terrible. And overall, it's going to stay here because at this point it works reliably. I'm going to wear it down. I hope that 12 speed is going to trickle down to lower end groups at some point in the future. So it might improve its situation, but for now, should you get it? No, not really. Unless you like tinkering with your bike. Anyhow, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you're going to share it around because it makes the channel grow, and I am always getting nervous when I need to ask for something because it's really awkward. So I'm going to finish this video right now.